Good morning, everybody. I'm Rob.
I'm Chuck.
Thank you guys for joining us again for another episode of What Are We Doing? This show is brought to you by Pursuit of Purpose. And today, we're going to discuss a topic that has a lot to do with mental health.
Okay.
The topic is obligation, the word, the concept, and how it applies to everyday life.
All right.
And what it means to us as a culture, and how can we improve on utilizing that concept to make it work for us rather than against us.
Nice.
And so, Chuck, what do you mean when you tell someone or use the word obligation? What does it mean to you?
Well, one of the first things I try to do is to get people to do what you just basically did to me, is to get them to define it. Because usually when they come in, they're feeling this pressure that, well, that's my job, that's what I do, that's what everybody expects of me. And so I said, well, if we could put it in a concise word, we'll say you feel like that's your obligation.
Right.
Like, yeah. I said, okay. Well, what do you think about that? Is that pressure feel good, or is it not feel good? And I look at them like, I'm not trying to keep it so simple that it's elementary here, but I think we can.
Right.
Does it feel good? And usually they'll settle on, well, no, it doesn't feel good all the time. I go, well, then let's talk about that. So now we're getting into why it doesn't feel good, because maybe they don't feel like they're measuring up. Like I feel obligated, but I don't ever seem to get there. And instead of seeing it as a challenge, they see it more as kind of a judgment. Like I'm less than, I'm no good, I'm never going to measure up.
Right.
And we slip into the absolutes, and then it just gets worse from there.
Yeah. And to me, obligation, I'll just make it real simple. When I use the word obligation, it makes it seem like a duty.
Yes.
When I say that someone else or myself has an obligation, that translates to a duty.
Yeah.
It means something that they are expected or required to do, a commitment that they are honor bound to keep and perform. Now, that word means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I'm sure there's a lot of other translations, but to me, I like to keep it simple.
Yes.
Obligation means duty.
Means duty.
And if you're out there in our audience, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to see comments, feedback, questions, anything that you've got to add to this discussion. We'd love your input. Please get engaged. And don't forget to hit the follow, like, share, subscribe, whatever button it is on your respective social media. We appreciate our audience, and we want to hear from you. So thank you. So what are words that create obligation in social structure? Have you ever thought about this? I'm sure you have. I'm going to throw a couple out there.
Okay.
I hear people use these words all the time, the word yes and the word no, just like to keep things simple, right?
Right.
So of those two words, which one creates obligation?
I would think that if I had to go with one of those two, I'd go with a no.
The no creates the obligation?
Yes, because in the yes, okay, I am committed to a satisfying activity that I've already accepted as good. Okay. But if there's a no, if you will, then now I'm trying to maybe win over. I'm trying to, and in my self-imposed obligations, I'm trying to win some type of personal prize.
Okay.
And so I want to go back a step to your definition of duty. Okay. Is there ever a time to apply that? And this is in my thinking, I'll answer my own question, friends. So where the duty actually works out well. I think in a job setting it can, but you start putting it in a personal setting like family, then it gets complicated and convoluted. In a job setting, okay, that's what I'm hired to do. I can read that on the contract. And so I would be okay with that obligation. So that to me would be a healthy yes.
Okay.
A no might be going into territory I don't need to be going into, but that's what I do. I'm the dad, I'm the mom, I'm the whatever. And now I have these unhealthy obligations.
That's interesting. So that's a fascinating point of view. And I would have actually taken that 180 degrees different direction. I would have gone the opposite.
Okay.
In my perspective, I would have said yes equals obligation and no equals freedom.
Oh.
Because typically when we use that language, when we say yes, we're making a commitment.
Hmm.
We are obligating ourselves to whatever we're giving affirmation to, affirmative response.
Okay.
So something that I teach people when we're doing work site training is to have healthy boundaries. And this can apply to any part of life, but if you are going to operate with healthy boundaries, you have to learn how to use the word no.
Hmm.
You have to use the word no in such a way to protect yourself from over obligation.
Ah, yes.
So every time we use the word yes, whether it be socially, professionally, whatever it might, at home, in your home life, if you use the word yes, you're making a commitment that you are then honor bound to keep.
Yes.
You're giving yourself a duty.
I keep saying yes. We are. And maybe in the beginning, we're not perfectly sure what we're committing to. It seems like it's okay for whatever reason. Maybe we get in it and we realize it possibly should have been a no.
Yes.
And that's kind of that more experiential way of learning.
Right.
I think over time, though, we have to be so careful that I don't say yes because I want some secondary favor. I want them to like me. I want them for us to be friends or whatever. And that happens a lot in settings where that probably shouldn't even be applied. Like, let's say the workplace.
Right.
You know, I'm not necessarily here to be a friend. I can be friendly, but because we hear that a lot. We hear that a lot in our coaching, that sometimes people they're not kind. They're not considerate and those sorts of things.
That's right.
So we get to ask the questions, well, is that their job? Is it their job to be kind and a buddy and those sorts of things?
Right.
And so then I'd go to the yes, a negative yes. A negative yes might be you hoping to get that from them. Some sweet type response, well, I couldn't do this without you. You're like, well, maybe so, but do I really need to hear that? Right. So maybe a healthy no is me protecting myself from going into areas I don't need to be going into.
So what happens when we over obligate ourselves? What happens inside of us when we over obligate ourselves? What do you think, Chuck?
I think, well, first, I think you're going to feel it. You're going to know. And most mature, we have a very mature audience, and I think you're going to have that weird sense of that this doesn't feel right.
Yes.
That I don't like the setting. I don't like the feedback I'm getting, and maybe it's just a gut feeling. And whenever that happens, if I don't have some set in place way to stop this momentum,
right.
I got to ride this thing out, and I'm going to dread it the entire time. And I think so. There's part of it.
So you brought up dread. Mm-hmm. Dread is akin to fear, which is akin to anxiety.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I thought, like, if we over obligate ourselves, we're headed down the path to anxiety.
Yes.
And depression and feeling, as we talked about on last week's episode, mm-hmm. feeling inadequate.
Yes.
And so who is our first obligation to? Our first and foremost, most important obligation.
Yes, it's going to be to us.
That's right, to ourselves.
That's right.
So the best way to honor that obligation, that duty to ourselves, is to have healthy
boundaries. Yes.
So if we practice good use of our language, you like to talk about language.
Put some words on it. Put some language.
If we keep it simple and we learn the art of using yes and no in their appropriate time to honor our first obligation.
Yes.
It's safe to say that if we did that, we would protect ourselves, we would protect our mental health, and then as a result, we might even accidentally protect our social structure too. We would actually then become people of better character and integrity because people would respect our responses more.
Yes.
They would know that if I said yes, my yes is a yes. It's not a yes because I want you to like me or be happy, and I might change it to a no later.
Right.
And if I tell you no, it's a respectable no.
Yes.
And my reasons for it are valuable enough, and that my friends know when I say no, it's not because I don't like them and I don't care for them. It's because I'm a person of integrity and I'm protecting my mental health and my character.
That's right. Because when I'm not well, I can't be well for you.
That's right.
And I cannot give you what I don't have. Now that's a fundamental truth, friends. I cannot give people what I don't have. So if I'm operating in these unhealthy, boundaryless, obligated world that I created, then I'm deteriorating as a healthy person, and that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the worst of me instead of the best of me.
So the last couple of episodes that we've done, we've talked about different things and how they apply at the holiday season.
Mhm.
Okay, so we talked about feelings of inadequacy. We talked about the commercialization of Christmas and the holiday season. Well, this word obligation and all its concepts that go with it play into both of those two episodes, because at this time of year, how often do we feel so obligated in every way? Right. So our work schedules, because this time of year is during the winter, this may seem superfluous, but our work schedules can increase because if we work in an environment where, like, say there's an office where there's a lot of people and we fall into whatever that structure is, whether it be a subordinate role or a leadership role, those environments can be short-staffed because of sickness and travel and whatever the case may be. This time of year, short staffing is a more prevalent problem than most other time of year. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would, especially, holidays.
So that being a fact, we then in the work environment start to feel responsible for everyone, for the workload. And we'll say yes to more than we should.
Right.
We'll say yes to things that we probably internally know that we can't really keep the obligation up.
Right.
So even in the workplace, if your boss comes to you and says, will you do this? Or can you do this? Or can I, whatever. Or if you even think that the need arises, you feel compelled to say yes.
Right.
You feel compelled to fill that void, fill that gap, even at the sacrifice of your own integrity and character,
right,
because you think it's what you need to do to be appreciated, liked, or belong.
Right. And that's not saying we can't contribute.
That's right.
It's saying that we have to be careful how much we contribute.
Yeah.
So if a boss comes with this host of things that he or she's needing overcompensation, because there's going to be a lot of people out and vacations and various things. If you just take on everything, every request as a yes, you will burn out quick.
Yes.
And then you're building all that secondary. And now I'm resentful.
Yep.
And I start taking it out on people and they don't appreciate me. Y'all know how these trends go. But really it started with me. Now, if I look at that list and I say, I'm willing to help with these things. Yep. Okay, well, what I'm doing instinctively is I am maybe in the moment, it may just happen in one meeting, I'm measuring what I think that I can do.
Right.
I think I can do those extra few things. I can tack on a few more hours of this day to make sure this gets done so we can go home and come back a little better prepared because that person's going to leave early and those sorts of things. And I know that there's a level of appreciation. Now, I'm sure the boss is sitting there would love for somebody to take it all on. No. If there is a team of people, well, then let's spread this energy. You do not have to be obligated to take it all on. Where's that written? Nowhere. Now, you don't really have to be obligated to do anything, but I think generally we do have a bit of a kind persuasion and we want to help.
Absolutely. And it's okay to take on more than your typical tasks as long as you maintain the line of your integrity, yes, maintain who you are. Always follow your moral compass.
Yes.
Always stay true to your character.
Right.
Don't compromise yourself. You are your number one obligation.
That's it.
And it's okay to use no as your boundary, as your protector.
Mm-hmm. So
nobody out there can disrespect anyone who gives no as the answer with good character.
Correct. And I like how you started that phrase. No one out there can disrespect anybody who respects themselves.
That's right.
If it's presented in a respectful way.
That's right.
Not throwing your hands up saying, I'm not going to do that. That's not my job. If I say I'm not available for all of that, but I'm available for this.
Yeah.
And I think that is easily interpreted as I'm sitting here dealing with a self-respecting person.
That's right.
And I think they want to honor that. That gives them a sense of confidence. Like, well, okay, I can't expect them to do all the things, but I bet they get that part right.
That's right.
Even though that's not their job.
Yep.
Not their original obligation, even if they're over obligating themselves a little bit.
Well, I think we've covered it pretty good on that in that arena. So I'm going to talk about something else and how the word obligation can apply to your overall existence. Okay. So we talked about how we are more or less honor bound to maintain our personal obligation to ourselves first.
Yes.
Okay. So what does that mean? How does that interpret? What is our biggest obligation to ourselves? I find this to be fascinating. And I'm going to look at something. I heard it said that it is our right to, not a privilege, it's our right to seek fulfillment. Okay. I heard it said by an author that many people know and love.
Okay.
And I paraphrased it, but the author was Simon Sinek.
Okay.
Okay. He's the author of many big popular books like Start With Why and, Find Your Why and all these other books. He's a great guy, very, very, very intelligent, a lot of great insight. But as I was in that book this morning and meditating on it, I actually uncovered another truth. And I would challenge Simon Sinek with this one. I believe it is your obligation, not just to yourself, but to your fellow man, to seek fulfillment. Now, does that sound selfish?
To me, no.
So here's the why behind it. Okay. If you find yourself in life floating along, not seeking fulfillment, you are not seeking to serve your fellow man.
Right.
Because you cannot have true fulfillment without serving.
That's right.
So you are not seeking what you're created to do. Are you obligated to do that? Well, yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Will you ever find fulfillment or will you ever find joy until you do that?
There's no way.
Not in its fullness.
And I'll say this, and I like your responding challenge, because if I'm not seeking fulfillment, that doesn't mean that inner desire for fulfillment is gone away.
That's right.
It's still there.
You can't get rid of it.
You can't get rid of it. And so if I'm not seeking it, then I'm not obviously not in growth mode. So as I am in this lack of pursuit, if you will, to use our word, lack of seeking fulfillment, that implies, because the desire is still there, I'm going to look to others to overcompensate.
Right.
And I will.
Right.
Folks, you see it all the time. I mean, there are, you call it, codependent, call it some other dysfunction. That's what it is. I'm looking for somebody else to make up the difference for what I haven't fixed, finished, or figured out.
That's right. And so if you're not seeking fulfillment, if you're not doing that, you know what else happens? You become bitter.
Yes.
You develop this sense of resentment and a feeling of powerlessness.
Yes.
Helplessness.
Bitterness, by definition, is the byproduct of dwelling on the deprived things of life.
Yeah.
All I think about is what I don't have. Thus, I'm not fulfilled. And we'll never really be fulfilled. It's really a matter of building a system of self-fulfillment. And that's just what a lot of times we do, I know, as counselors and coaches, is folks come in and we slowly but surely, they don't even know what we're doing likely yet. Some pick it up pretty quick, but we are trying to help them build a habit, these little bitty habits that they start putting in place to eventually build a broader system of self-fulfillment. And I'm going to use a positive obligation. And I said, so let's just put this one thing in place. Let's do it for 2 weeks, 15 days. And let's just see what happens. So obligate yourself to that 15 minutes every morning, and then come back in a couple of weeks and let's check your progress. Maybe you like it. Maybe you don't.
Right.
Maybe it's doing something. Maybe it's not. Okay. Just because I take it on, it's not a lifetime obligation. This is always in evolving mode. But you got to be committed to the evolution, which is also part of the fulfillment, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where I was going with that, and you went towards it perfectly, is that we are all created for a purpose. That purpose may be seasonal. It may change from time to time, but we are all created for a purpose, and it is impossible for us to find true fulfillment unless we are pursuing that purpose.
Yes.
Right? So
Literally, it is impossible. You're not going to find it if you're not looking for it.
And each one of us is created perfectly for that purpose to specifically fit where we are socially, where we are with our family, where we are professionally, whatever it may be. We have a purpose there. And if we're seeking that purpose, we'll find a way not only to find that fulfillment for us, but we're going to help somebody else find their fulfillment as well. Because none of us are perfect. We all lack.
Yes.
And we're all gifted. We all have gifts. We all have lack. And your gifts will balance my lack.
Yes.
So you seeking your fulfillment will help me seek my fulfillment, and likewise, reciprocated. So imagine what this place would be like, what our world would be like if that was our focus. If all of us were seeking fulfillment, true fulfillment, we would constantly be focused on serving.
Yes.
On making each other better.
Yes.
On becoming more together instead of competing and seeing what we could, gather from each other. We'd be looking to see what we could give to one another.
It's about the generous offering.
That's right.
So if I'm developing, now I have something to offer. As a famous author once said, he said, I'm challenging my children as they're growing up, and I challenge the friends they bring over. Eventually those friends became girlfriends and boyfriends and fiancés. But the common question he would ask is, how are you serving the created today?
That's right.
That's others. How are you serving other people today? And my today is not necessarily today. It is my season.
Right.
What are you doing these days? Oh, he said, one young man had a job at a local restaurant not far from my house. I said, great. How do you serve people? And he kind of started going into his waiter duties. And I said, well, but go a little broader. He says, well, I want people to have a nice dining experience with their family. I said, there you go. Now you're helping them create a memory. And so they may not associate you per se, but you're contributing to the family who will tell that story in the weeks to come to go, we all went to such and such a restaurant, had a great time. You contributed to that. He said, I watched this young man who was my daughter's boyfriend go, yeah, like he figured it out.
That's right.
And now at 16, 17, hopefully that he has reoccurring experiences 5, 10, 15, 35 years from now, because he'll never forget that one qualifying response coming from that author, who in that case was a dad. I thought, wow, brilliant was that?
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. Well, ladies and gentlemen out there in our audience, we really appreciate you guys joining us today. And we will be here again next week on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And we hope that you'll join us. Please do chime in. We want to hear from you. We want to see if there's any topics you guys would love to discuss. We will happily bring them up and go over them. Just keep in mind that your first commitment is to yourself. Yes. Honor your obligation to seek fulfillment for you. And that is not selfish in any way. Is it, Chuck?
No, not at all.
In fact, it's your best way that you can become a servant.
Yes.
To your fellow man, to your fellow people. So thank you guys for allowing us to become a part of the pursuit of your purpose. I'm Rob.
I'm Chuck.
And don't forget, next week at 10 o'clock, another episode of What Are We Doing with Pursuit of Purpose. Y'all have a great day.